I apparently paused the recording and I didn't realize I did that. Wonder how that happened. Oh well. Okay, let's take a look at this quiz. If you have the quiz, then have it in front of you. If you don't have the quiz in front of you, then you can write the answers, just number 1, number 2, number 3, and then you can fill in the quiz. It's in Teams for you. Because this recording apparently paused for a while, the chapter, the other 10th grade class, their recording will be up as well. And so if you want to review anything that you missed, you can watch that one. Okay, number 1, the Greeks who sought Jesus in Jerusalem were probably proselytes, Gentile converts to Judaism, who were there to keep the Passover. I think they were there because of Passover. It's true because that's what your book says, but I would say we're possibly proselytes. But put true, I'm not going to ask that question on a test. The disciple whom the Greeks approached to find Jesus was Peter. Is that true or false? Caitlin, who was it? You're shaking your head, so it's false.
Wasn't it Philip?
It was Philip. Yeah, they came to Philip. Philip got Andrew, and the two of them went to see Jesus and tell him. And then the next one also is not one that I would ask. I'm going to explain it to you and then give you the answer. Unbelievers can have no assurance that God's Spirit will continue his convicting work in their hearts. So one of the roles of the Holy Spirit is to convict us of our sin. That feeling when you're thinking about doing something you shouldn't do, or when you're doing something you shouldn't do, that's the conviction of the Holy Spirit. And so believers are convicted by the Holy Spirit. Unbelievers can be convicted. In fact, it's the conviction of the Holy Spirit that draws us to Christ oftentimes. But there's no requirement to convict unbelievers. In other words, the Holy Spirit may not continue to do that to unbelievers. So that answer is true. But again, that's not a question I would ask on a test. Now, the rest of this, or not the rest of it, up till the essay, the short answer ones are all in your lecture notes. So if you want to turn to the page of your lecture notes, that would be pages 194 and on to 195. And you'll be able to find those answers. So according to this lesson, what were the 2 purposes of Christ's death? What was one of them? Caitlin Holloway.
To the final triumph over Satan.
Yeah, to defeat Satan. Defeat Satan. And then what's the other one? Grace?
To draw all men to himself.
Yep, and women. Yeah, to draw all people to himself. And then what were the 3 purposes of Christ's life? What was one purpose of Christ's life? Caitlin?
To give light.
To give light, yeah. And to give light, I think, means to give understanding to people. In other words, to give truth to people, to give them understanding. And what's another one?
To save the world.
To save the world. And then what's the last one? Jake?
Obey the Father.
Yep, to obey the Father. So to give light or understanding to people, to save the world, and to obey the Father. And then this is on the last page, 195. What were the 2 responses of the people to Jesus's words in this lesson? So what was one response that people had? to Jesus in this lesson? Kate?
Unbelief.
Unbelief. They didn't believe in him. They continued to refuse to believe. And then what was the other one? Caitlin Holloway?
Belief without confession.
Belief without confession, which essentially is saying just a sort of mental assent, but not a heart, giving one's heart, saying, yeah, I believe. It's what James talks about when he says, you say that you have faith, good, but even the demons believe and tremble, right? The demons know that Jesus is the Christ, is Lord. Doesn't mean they believe in them. So knowing that is different than turning your life over to that. So belief without confession. Now, I'm going to talk through this essay, and you can just write whatever you want to write as I do. But here's what it says. In this lesson, Christ described his death by using the illustration of planting a kernel of wheat. Explain what he meant by that illustration. So when a seed falls to the ground or is planted into the ground, it in a sense dies. In other words, it ceases to be what it once was. So when a kernel of anything, whether that's wheat or corn or the doggone acorns in my yard and black walnuts in my yard, if we don't rake those things up, the squirrels often take them away for us. But we end up with a bunch of little oak trees and a bunch of little walnut trees that we have to pull up. So when that happens, when those things are planted into the ground, those seeds, they cease to become what they were, right? So in a sense, it dies. However, it also grows, it germinates to produce a plant far bigger with far more seeds on it. Some of those walnuts have ended up in our forest, in the forest behind our house, and trees spring up from it. So if it dies, if that seed dies, then it produces a plant with many more seeds on it. So let's apply that idea, that analogy to Christ. Similarly, when Christ died, it produced a harvest of salvation, a harvest of people who came to know him, who come to know him, who become followers of him, followers of Christ. And then in turn, those followers of Christ lead others to become followers of Christ. So one person dies and many, many, many are saved from that fruit, from that death. Anything you want me to repeat in there? Your class just ended. Any questions? Okay, well, you all got 100% on that, so congratulations for that. And yeah, I pray that you will have a blessed Easter and worship probably in your own home. Yeah, he is risen. He's risen indeed. So let's celebrate that, no matter what's happening in our world right now. Let's celebrate the truth that we can have hope and we can have life because he's risen. Amen. Okay. Great to see all of you. Make sure if you have questions if you have questions, you don't understand something, especially as we get closer to tests and things, email me, text me, call me. I want to answer those questions, okay? Okay, I miss you all. Bye-bye.